Today we're featuring Minnesota School Forest Program, and we have featured speakers Laura Duffey and Sue Powell. So I'm going to briefly introduce them, and once I finish introducing them, then I will turn screen sharing capabilities over to them to give their presentation. So Laura Duffey manages the School Forest Program, which was established in 1950 and currently consists of more than 160 sites across the state. The goal of this Minnesota Department of Natural Resources program is to get more students learning outside in their school forest more often. In the early days, school forests were forested areas that um, schools bus to. Today, more school forests are essentially outdoor learning areas on or near school grounds. Laura contends that moving learning outdoors needs three things: leadership that supports allowing classes outdoors, site management support, and teachers who know how to teach outdoors. Laura has a Master of Science degree in environmental education from the University of Minnesota, is a volunteer supervisor for a landscape rehabilitation organization, and is a twice elected school board chair for a nature based charter school. In addition to developing and conducting dozens and dozens of teacher professional development trainings, she has worked alongside foresters and school ground staff for 25 years, setting up and maintaining outdoor learning spaces. She has presented at dozens of national conferences on topics related to getting more students outdoors more frequently. So we're really excited to have Laura. Joining Laura is Sue Powell. Dr. Sue Powell is a passionate educator and leader dedicated to fostering a love of the outdoors and environmental learning among students. With extensive experience in program development, community partnerships, and curriculum design, Sue has led innovative initiatives to integrate nature into student learning. She successfully guided Garlough School's transformation from a neighborhood school to an internationally renowned environmental magnet and has served as principal for the past 20 years. Sue currently serves on the Dodge Nature Center Board of Directors and has received numerous awards for her commitment to environmental education and school transformation. She strongly believes in empowering teachers to take students outside to explore and connect with the natural world as a vital part of learning. Please join me in welcoming Laura and Sue. Thank you for joining us.
I'm Laura Duffey. Thank you for the introduction. I forgot what I had written, so that sounded awfully impressive. Thank you. Um, I'm here today I was asked by Sharon to present about the Minnesota School Forest Program to this group, and I'm really excited to do so. So you've gotten our introductions, and I won't spend too much time on that. What Sue Powell and I intend to do by the end of this presentation is just so that you all get a quick overview of what school forests look like in Minnesota, and there's a lot of them, what school forests are for, and then how to address some of the challenges for keeping sites safe, healthy, and accessible. Those are the three adjectives we use the most. And then how to keep sites going after school staff changes, because we all know that happens. Okay, so that's us again, and we already got a good introduction there. Sue, do you want to say anything else so people can hear your voice?
No, but good morning, and I'm glad you're here.
All right, great. So let's see, next one here. A little bit of an overview. So the School Forest Program was established way back in 1949. I think Mikaela just said 1950, close enough. It was 1949 when we passed a state statute that said that educational institutions in the state of Minnesota could designate land as a school forest for educational purposes. So some far-reaching person way back then thought this was a good idea. The earliest school forests were all designated on tax forfeited state land, and a lot of those are located in northern Minnesota where they're really quite big. They're up to 300 acres or more, and they're managed like forests. The cool thing about having this program is that longevity really is the key. We have school forests in the program that have been here for 70 years, and they just keep going. And the reason why is because as a state agency, we're here to keep it going, and we made a commitment to do so. We do that one way. One way we do that is by keeping the schools accountable. If once a school is enrolled in the program, they must report use to the Department of Natural Resources every year, showing that they're using the site for education. And that's where I get a lot of the photos you're going to see today. A really quick clarifier, just because this forest school, I'm getting a lot of people confusing school forest with forest school. A school forest is a place supported by the DNR. Teachers use them as an alternative outdoor classroom to do regular school lessons and activities. A forest school, if you've not heard of it before, is a philosophy that's borrowed from the United Kingdom. A child's entire school day is outside. And we have some forest schools in Minnesota, and it gets to 20 below, and it can be done. Another interesting thing to know is that Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan have school forest programs. So if you're not from one of those three states, this might be all new to you. Here's where our school forests are located. So if you're not familiar with Minnesota, up north is pretty rural. Most of the school forests are located in the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area. That's a big blue blob. And then we have another cluster in Duluth. That's at the edge of Lake Superior up there. And then a third cluster in the southern area in the city of Rochester, where the Mayo Clinic is. But they're all over the state, and they're pretty well distributed between elementary and high school programs. There's 3 preschools and 1 grade K-12. Everybody asks about the colors because this map is on our webpage, along with a lot of other really good resources. I think this is the only time my website comes up. So if you want to click on that website or save it for later, I do encourage you to do that right now. The blue pins mean that the school forest is on land owned by the school. Pretty straightforward. The red pins mean the forest is on tax forfeited state land, conveyed to the school for that purpose of education. And then green are for the schools that don't have a good school ground or they're close to tax forfeit land, and they're under a written agreement with another entity to designate it as a school forest. So it's often a city park, or in a couple cases, like a YMCA camp, things like that. So the schools forests are generally located where people live. And so you'll notice this big hole in the southwest part of the state, and that's because that's where the prairie is. And I think it's just the name of the program. They're all eligible to join in the program, but I think the main school forest turns away a lot of people who live in the prairie and make other assumptions. So as Mikaela stated, the basic mission of our program is just we need to get more kids learning outdoors in their school forest more often, starting from whatever baseline the school is at. It's not complicated. So what you're seeing here is pretty typical situation for a school forest site. Landscape designers who might be on the call here, I don't see anything too engineered. We're just using found objects. So a lot of schools start with where the teachers are, and we're going to hear this refrain over and over. Most teachers were never trained how to teach outside. And that is a barrier that I've heard over and over, and they need permission from their administration and help to do that. And the other big purpose for using school forests lately is a growing trend, not news to any of you, but for addressing mental health concerns. And school counselors are using the outdoors to take kids on behavior regulation and brain breaks and things like that. So it's multiple uses. I alluded to earlier that the DNR holds the schools accountable. They need to report to the DNR every year that they're using their site. If the schools are using the site, the DNR gives school forests a bunch of resources. And so for those of you who don't have school forest programs, these are the things that over the last 70 years we've discovered what schools actually need so that these sites that we invest in get used. And it's probably just as appropriate for any schoolyard. Maybe not the first one, but in a way, yes, the first one. So all school forests need forester help, even the urban sites. A forester writes a stewardship plan and assists whenever they can. A stewardship plan is like a management plan, but for a forest. And every school needs one of those anyway. What is nice is that the DNR has a set of foresters that are located throughout the state, and foresters are all assigned a school forest to kind of take care of in their local area. Unfortunately, some foresters have up to 20 sites to take care of, which is a little much because they have other duties as well. But most foresters love this part of their job. When they say they assist whatever they can, they often act as concierges with local partners that are available to help these schools. So no two sites are alike. And schools get help from all sorts of outside entities, whether it's the local Kiwanis Club or the local Soil and Water Conservation District, or now I'm thinking the Boys and Girl Scouts, whatever they can, the forester will help connect the school. Another thing that teachers and staff often need are lessons. They're not sure what to teach outdoors. And the low-hanging fruit is whatever you're teaching indoors can probably be taught outdoors. It's just a setting change. But we also provide a lot of lessons that come from a variety of sources, environmental education lessons, and other lessons that are appropriate for that site. So we have an activity board that is hosted on my webpage that teachers share lessons back and forth with, and they really like that. The other thing that we support is we support our own little community of practice, our network of teachers. We have a conference every year. This is super important because, like I said, these teachers, there's very few teachers I've ran into who have had any formal training on how to teach outside. So this network of teachers teach each other how to do that and how to gain confidence. And then lastly, DNR also gives school forests the things that a lot of sites end up needing. So the kid with the red shoes, he's working with a field desk. Our program connects volunteers who make classroom sets of these wooden field desks and deliver them to schools, so any class can pick them up and take them into the woods with them and use them as a field desk. They are wooden boxes, and the top lid is a clipboard that slides in and out. And then they can carry their supplies in there. The other thing that we provide are buckthorn removal tools. So those of you who are not from the north or northeast, buckthorn is a highly invasive tree that really gets in the way of taking kids outside. So we're battling it constantly. And so our foresters will help connect. And we do big buckthorn removal days. It's a huge service and learning opportunity up here. The DNR provides school forest signs. That's the big metal sign you see on the bottom there. And we all know signage is important so people know what the space is dedicated for, because a lot of these sites are often used by the community. And then a lot of state DNRs do this. They provide free tree seedlings from the state's forest nursery. So we're not the only state to do that. So if you have a state DNR or equivalent, there might be a state forest nursery that has seedlings of trees and shrubs that are appropriate for your state to tap into. Right. So we vet our schools pretty well. We're getting more. We get interest of schools to enter the program all the time, more than I have the capacity to serve. So we vet them hard, and the reason why is because of the capacity, but we also want to make sure there's a long-term commitment. So the easiest criteria to meet is the forest. Finding a forest or a dedicated part of the school grounds to use. The next hardest part, though, is making sure that school community has a critical mass, I just call it a critical mass, of teachers who are open to moving their instruction outdoors. And we're just looking for that willingness. And then thirdly, and very importantly, is a committee of supporters who are responsible for making sure the site is used and cared for long term. And that's the biggest part of my job, is to make sure that committee goes on. So the picture that you're seeing there is DNR staff working with a set of teachers at a school forest in north of Minneapolis they're doing a professional development in their own school forest, so they know how to use their site, they learn what's in the site, and then activities they could do. right there. Okay, just a quick snapshot of what a rural school forest looks like. These are the big, 100 to 300 acre sites up north. This is where a lot of the traditional forestry activities take place. There might be logging, there might be harvesting and tree planting, and any revenues coming from the logging are reinvested back into the school forest, which means I could pay for busing to get to the site or to pay for trail development or whatever they need. A lot of recreation takes place at these sites as well, like cross-country skiing and snowshoeing. But even outside of recreation, a good chunk of our school forests have class sets of child-sized snowshoes because you cannot get out into the woods without them in the winter. And winter is most of our school year. In fact, I was laughing with Sharon not too long ago that green schoolyards, I don't know, is appropriate for Minnesota because we're only really green in September and May. The rest of the town is pretty brown and white, or the rest of the time is pretty brown and white. So that's what we do. A lot of maple syrup in up here too. The suburban sites are a little smaller. They can be rather built up, like the picture on the right. This particular site got a grant and some local volunteers to put together these tables and the outdoor whiteboard and the storage shed. And those teachers use this site all the time. But then a lot of urban sites and suburban sites start out like those blank slates that Green Schoolyards America is familiar with. Maybe this is an asphalt, but it's just turf grass and there's not much there. But we show teachers how to use that if you're just starting out. So these kids are doing a plot study using a hula hoop and more of those field desks to study. And suburban school forests, like all sites, we always retain those existing natural features whenever we can. I'm sure landscape design or architects know that. To the left, we have kids on a piece of what I like to call nature play equipment. It's a big log, a tree that fell in the woods. And on the right, the kids are actually studying lichens that are growing on this basswood tree. So they're not just playing. Our urban sites are a lot smaller. They're between 1/3 of an acre to 10 acres or 1/4 acre. They're usually right next to the building. They're often open for community use. So the one on the left is a vegetable garden with the raised beds, all that. It's a very urban site. This is a reclaimed brownfield that's in Minneapolis. Very small, but the students use it every day. The picture on the right, this is from Sue's school at Garlough Elementary School. These are benches that are permanently established near a bird feeding station, and this helps acclimate the birds to human faces so that when the kids sit on these chairs quietly, often the birds will come and perch right on their hats or right on their laps. So that's kind of a cool feature to have. Urban sites look all different. So the big urban woods in the upper left corner there, engineering is a big academic standard, engineering and problem solving. So this is an activity, survival skills in the woods is a big activity for high schools. The picture in the lower left is a stone amphitheater that's built on a hillside in Roseville, Minnesota, which is a suburb of St. Paul. This is probably one of the more designed sites that we have. Right behind the stone amphitheater is a major freeway. And so it's rather noisy, but I love the way the kids are all facing downhill so they can hear the teacher better and their ears hear the freeway, but not as loud as they would otherwise. And then the picture on the right are kids doing more plot studies at the Coleman Woodland School Forest. This is an unusual site that more than one school uses, and it's open to everybody. All right. And I can't stress this enough. Unlike some other organizations that come in and completely redesign a site with maybe $500,000 or $1 million or more, our sites are really on shoestring budgets. So I'll describe what's in the pictures here. The kids on the left filling the bird feeders, they got a grant to just have birdseed always be at the school. And so this is a big part of the kids' curriculum, is to go out once a week, fill the bird feeders, and watch and study the animal movements on trail cameras. The kids in the middle picture, those benches were created by the shop class at high school. And a lot of our sites get their features, their benches, their boardwalks, their bridges, all those things. Their trails are all done by service learning groups of high school kids. And then the picture on the right, this is Sue's school again. And she can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the logs came from the city park staff who rolled them in, and the teacher had the kids design this space themselves. So the kids moved the logs and designed where they wanted them, and it's used both as for play and for an outdoor classroom setting. You see the whiteboard on the wall there, which I love. It's so simple and achievable. Many sites do have loose parts that are very important to outdoor learning, like the tightrope on the left, or the tree cookies in the middle to learn literacy skills, and engineering a fort from sticks. This does require a shift in ground staff mentality about perceptions of cleanliness or messiness. It's a little bit easier at a traditional school forest site, but if you have a more groomed schoolyard, this does take a cultural mind shift and a plan to replace these objects as they get battered with kid use, and you get more of them later. Nature play areas, the movement all over the country, and I love it. So the way these nature play sites came about, on the left at Garlough, once again, the city was taking down a bunch of trees at a local golf course. The teachers found out that that was happening and said, asked this city arborist, can you just bring them here when you're done? And they did. And not only did they do that, they placed the logs how the teacher wanted them in wood chips and brought in sticks. And according to this picture, it's a very popular site with the kids. In fact, the day I took this picture, it was a little bit on the warmer side, and I saw the kids all run out of Sue's building. They ran right past the playground, which was hot, and then right to this spot because it was in the shade, and it was just lovely to see them even engage with this. The picture on the right, very similar situation. This is Riverside School Forest in Rochester, and the Mayo Clinic is about a mile away from the site. So it's being recognized as a need for nature play and for wellness as well. Tools. In Minnesota, and maybe in other parts of the country, I think there are some essential tools that I run into. So benches that are right outside the school building on the left, looks a little boring, not really built up, but this is the first step often to get teachers outside, is something right next to the building and looking controllable and containable. So Leopold benches, this is a very urban site on the left. On the right, a lot of schools do apply for mini grants to pay for a class set of snowmobile suits. That's what those things are hanging on the wall, or snowsuits. It's almost like the school uniform. The kids run in, they put on the snowsuit, they put on their boots and mittens, and the mittens that go all the way up to the elbow, so that they can spend the day, or at least pack the day outside. And then when they're done, they all hang the suits up on the wall to dry for the next day or the next class. I call this an essential tool because it's hard to go outside in the winter if the weather is getting to you. It does get cold up here. And so many grants have gone a long way to help overcome this barrier. You have to dress for the weather. And Sue will get to you very soon here, I think. But the maintenance mantra, these are my 3 favorite adjectives to describe what is needed. And I'm sure some of you are nodding your heads. How do we keep our sites safe, healthy, and accessible? And so that does take some determination and some forethought and planning on that. These kids are all getting ready to do a buckthorn pull, and they're going to take care of the buckthorn in the woods. That's all the green stuff you see in the background. And I'm going to let Kim talk about that soon coming up. But here is one way to address the maintenance issue, at least at our sites. Our sites are much bigger than a schoolyard often, they're 10 acres or more. So how do we keep all that maintained? One way is to keep the community involved. And so up in Esco, that's way in northern Minnesota, they have a community snowshoe hike. And that's an ice luminary in the foreground, where the whole community will come out and snowshoe in the snow. It's really magical. And they get involved with their site that way. A lot of schools have Earth Day cleanups where the kids get involved and do some trail maintenance. That's what's happening there, or just pick up trash. And then, of course, because the DNR has those free tree seedlings, they do annual planting days to keep the community involved. And so these are really good traditions to keep things maintained when you're on a shoestring budget. And so when we get to the discussion part, if you have any more suggestions, we'll take them. So that was my part of the presentation. I talked a lot. I am the inch wide, no, I am the mile deep, or inch wide, mile deep. I'm scratching the surface of what's in the School Forest program. Sue knows her site so well, and she can go very deep on these questions about how this actually happens at a specific school. I just have the bird's eye view. So I'm going to turn it over to Sue, and we're going to have these challenges that we're going to discuss right now. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much. So basically, having the longevity of a school forest and a program really is about supporting teachers. And that's really the bottom line. You have to have give teachers permission to get outside. Then sometimes there needs to be a nudge after they've had all the professional development and they know that they have the skills. Sometimes you just need to give them a nudge to actually do it. And we actually have someone in our building that, as we have staff turnover, will go out with a teacher the first month or so of school to get them feeling secure in wherever they're going. Because we have about, 20 or so different, we call OWLs, outdoor wonder learning stations, that are actually outdoor classrooms where you can take kids to learn. And so that's really about longevity. It's just really supporting it and giving people the nudge. And many teachers are disconnected from nature. Definitely, in my opinion, since I'm an older generation person, our younger generation, there's just so many fears about taking students outside, and they just don't have a connection. So we are working, very diligently with Laura and with other organizations in Minnesota for teachers to see that connection and then make it a high priority. There is a fear that students will misbehave outside, but it never happens. Really, rarely ever happens. And while I was at Garlough, every single week we would do something called walk from school, and we would walk almost a half mile through the woods to get on our buses. And this is a school of 450 students. 40% of our students speak Spanish. Many newcomers, many families who are undocumented. And so, and not that that is anything to bring up other than the level of English and understanding is at a very low level, and nobody ever runs off. We've never ever lost a student, and it's one of their favorite times, and we do it all year round. And teachers do feel comfortable, obviously, as I'm sure all of you know, to stay inside where there's four walls, where they feel that there's actually they're in more control. But when you learn how to designate a space outside with your students and um, give them that opportunity to go outside, the same four walls exist in a different manner out in nature, just as they do inside, and your engagement increases exponentially. So yes, if your school culture excludes the outdoors, that's going to be a problem. And I think that's a leader's problem. I mean, that if I think that just comes from the leader if they're not believing that that is going to be important. I always push people to go outside. You can do your reading lesson outside. You can do your math lesson outside. You can have your counselor time outside. You can do your circle time outside. I mean, basically every single thing you do inside, you can do outside. And the time might be a little bit different because there's transition times to get outside, but everything you can do inside, you can do outside. There are some principals that absolutely don't want their students going outside. And right now in Minnesota, we're experiencing a little bit of that just due to the recent really unfortunate and scary incident at a school. Students are feeling, and principals and teachers, that they need to be inside. And another challenge, but we're really lucky in Minnesota, is teacher training and professional development. We have so many resources in Minnesota, many resources that are free that will come to your school, give lots of time and stuff, because all teachers want stuff, and train you to take students outside. And then another challenge for sure is outdoor gear, especially in Minnesota. And while we don't have those cute little snow suits, we do have school-wide snow gear for all students. And we are building on getting school-wide one-piece rain suits. Right now, we just have them for kindergarten so that our students can go outside in the rain, because that's like so fun. But those are, some of the challenges that we have faced. And I really believe that virtually any challenge can be overcome if you believe it's possible. So.
Yeah, thanks. Those are good. And another challenge that I didn't have on here too is, so like the picture you're seeing is pretty urban. Big challenge is ground staff. They are often hired at the district level, where they send guys on lawnmowers to mow 7 schools in a day, and to get them to change something on their schedule can be challenging, especially if you have to mow around all these little posts or something like that. So it is a challenge that we do need to work with at a school by school basis often. Sometimes at these bigger rural sites where there's trails, we need somebody to mow the trails a few times a year, or it gets overgrown fast. We were joking the other day that we were going to name a trail the Bob Larson Trail, so that Bob, the grounds guy, felt some ownership of the trail. So maybe we'll have to start doing things like that. This was kind of I got one more slide here, and this is kind of the end thank you slide. Are there any other questions or comments or thoughts from what Sue and I talked about?
Yeah, thank you so much, Laura and Sue. That was so inspiring but informative. And I think when you speak to the longevity of, what this work can look like, it's just really inspiring. If you want to stop sharing screen, Laura, that would be great. Okay. And I know Melody Alcazar had plenty of questions that were coming through in the chat. So Melody, if you can unmute yourself, I'm happy for you to engage with folks.
I did. Yeah. Sorry to take up so much space with my question bombardment. I'm just really intrigued by this program. So I think thinking back to that map, I'll just tackle one of them. And it showed like the different colors and where everything is located. Do you have a breakdown of the percentage of Title I schools that are involved in the program? And are you working to try and hyper engage with the schools that are often less resourced and have less time to form a committee or submit an application or things like that?
Sure. Melody, I've been working in this job or alongside this program for 25 years, and never once have we solicited a school. So they come to us because we just don't have the ability to go to get more. But Title I, maybe Sue, you know that, it's probably a reflection of what's in the state. I'm not sure how many schools in the state are Title I. I think it's probably the same as the statewide. Do you know, Sue?
I don't know. We're a Title I school, but I'm not sure of what the percentage is.
Yeah. I'd say more than half, Melody, easily. Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, there are other questions. There's a question around, if there's any links to resources, either for the school or the state program. I did put the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources school forest program link inside. So that was a question. There was also a question around insurance, but I think Sue answered that. And then let's see.
So the insurance one, I'd like to know the answer to that because as far as I can tell, we just need to follow national playground safety standards. And those are, there's very little overlap between a nature play space and a built playground.
Melody, did you ask this question? Did you get the, wasn't tracking if you asked this question live, but have you, the question is, have you faced any challenges with nature play in the CRZ of the trees?
What's CRZ?
The critical root zone.
Thank you.
So we have a lot of issues locally. Our foresters are very protective of their trees. And so I'm in Texas, so it's very hot. And so we will only put in nature play if it's in a shaded space, but we've really had to work with our foresters to make sure that they're comfortable with what we're doing. And I noticed you had a lot of features that were very close to the kind of quarter critical root zone of some of those features, and didn't know if you had, especially since you work so closely with foresters, if there was any kind of pushback or compromise around those installations.
I think, well, in Minnesota, it might be different in Texas. I mean, once a tree is established, it's pretty established. The kids are, unless the kids are the weight of a truck, they're not going to compact the soil very much. We have a lot of water. But I would imagine until that tree is, once that tree is established, we don't have an issue. While it's being established, yes, we do have to fence off those trees. Or at least part of the critical root zone, I suppose. Right?
There's another question from also Melody regarding fencing of the school forests. If there's anything more to share about like access, I know Sue said that they're open to the public and how that's managed.
That's school by school decisions on your leadership. And Sue, I know you're pretty liberal with your leadership. We have a preschool in the program that has everything fenced in because they're a preschool and they're next to a road. But most of the sites are not fenced in. If they are fenced, it might be a split rail fence or just some kind of visual boundary, but not necessarily a boundary that keeps people or animals in and out. It's more of a visual for the teachers to feel comfortable to say, don't go past the split rail fence or don't go past the big oak tree or whatever it is. Sue, do you have any thoughts about fencing?
Yeah, we don't have any fencing, and I'm not even, well, you probably know how many acres our site, like our school is 13 acres, but I don't know how much of, I should know that, how many acres are involved with the school forest in addition. But we don't have any fencing, and if you didn't read the comment, we have a county or citywide frisbee golf course, which is used constantly, and actually the community parks in the school parking lot during the day and uses that golf course. And then we also have a countywide trail system that does go where the picture that Laura showed of the huge stumps, that is on the other side of like an 8-foot paved trail system that goes from river to river. So, we've never had any trouble with the public. We have a community garden there too, which our community can access. We've had interesting things happen because we have a naturalist on staff as well. And when they're going up and, having a little phenology hunt for something, they found like a bunker in the school forest, and that was really interesting. So someone dug a humongous bunker and was living there. In our school forest. And but I think they weren't there when the students found it. So I think that's the most interesting thing. We also had some damage done in a different part where we had our chamber of repulsion, which is an aquarium with a screen bottom where we put roadkill so it can rot and kids can watch it rot. And it was this huge aquarium, and someone smashed it. So, but nothing unusual that I think you wouldn't find any place else.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. There's a question, and I also was having a similar thought. So thank you, Ann Adams, for asking this question. But sounds like this amazing program has been around for decades, which we know it has in Minnesota. Do you have any advice for a state that is just starting this work?
I thought that question was going to come up, and I should be better prepared. I am lucky enough to step into an existing program, that was set up 70 years ago. It has evolved. I have my own experience, so I will say if there's any way to get it connected with a state agency that has some permanence. And the DNR in our state was a natural fit because, it initially started out that we need to have people interested in protecting natural resources in the long run. And that's how we steward our natural resources. And that must have evolved into making sure that students make that connection at a young age. I know there's some Richard Louv fans in the audience here, and I believe when I read that book so long ago, kids need to make that connection at a young age. Otherwise, it's hard to turn that ship around after their brains have solidified into nature scary, indoors good. So that's why the DNR is invested. So maybe your state DNR, our state Department of Education is actually starting to get on board with the benefits of nature instruction and moving nature outside. It's at beginning stages. We also have in this state a Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights Commission that has started. So there are several cities around the country and some states that have a Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights network. That is something you might want to tap into and see if you have that. I'm pretty sure San Francisco has one, and I don't pay attention to the other states because I'm focused on this one. So it's another resource. Sue, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, well, my one thought that came to mind was if the state is not participating in the Green Schools Award, that would be, like all states are invited to apply, and that might be one place where you could start pushing that if your school wants to apply for that award, that you would need, there's different pillars in the award, but that you typically need to have an outdoor element. So.
Thank you
Yeah,
both.
and I find that support for kids outside is pretty bipartisan, no matter what state you're in. Everybody has kids, and a lot of them want to take them hunting and fishing and playing in the water, and they value clean resources. So that might be the hook to look at.
That's a really good point. Thank you, Laura. There's a question again from Ann Adams that asks, how critical do you think legislation is in making something like this happen? I'd be interested to hear your response to that.
Well, we haven't had legislation in the past except for the school forest law that was passed back in 1949, and that was just basically a tax law at the time to be able to connect schools to these tax forfeit properties. So we've been operating kind of without legislation in that respect. but I love it. We need it, I think, now, especially more than ever. It was assumed in the old days that kids were connected to nature, and Sue and I are of a different generation when we know that's no longer true. So I don't know. Any thoughts, Sue, about legislation? Yeah,
Yeah,
we do.
I
Go ahead.
don't know if legislation is necessary. A passion to go forth, and I think however your school district is organized would probably be the most important. That you're going to have support from your county system or a city system. That you'll have support to try something um, small.
Mm-hmm. Yes, maybe starting with the district, Sue. It's leadership. This district leadership is so important. Your superintendent, principals.
That's helpful. Thank you both. Something that struck me that you were talking about, Laura, was the kind of beginning stages of engaging the State Department of Education, right? So, like, I think interagency, connectivity also feels like a really interesting lever to potentially move. So, Department of Natural Resources at the state level, the Department of Education, possibly Department of Public Health, looking at all the different things that any given state or region are looking to kind of address when it comes to children's health and well-being. So I think it's good to keep that in mind. Lauren, are there other questions that might be asked now that I may have?
Yes. Yeah, there's many good questions, but I want to lift up a question that you posed, Mikaela, about high school student engagement, especially when you were talking about the wood shop, creating the benches and things like that. And then someone was also asking more specifically about some designs and like building around trees that protect the roots. But I think, Mikaela, your question about green careers and career pathways, and to that end.
Yeah, sorry, I was just asking a question in the chat about when you were talking about like the high school students and shop building the benches, like so great, and they were like standing out there looking very proud of what they had built, and wondering if there's any intentionality around green career pathways, that DNR or this program is championing.
Yeah, there are several schools in the program that I know have active FFA clubs, Future Farmers of America, and that also includes forestry. That a lot of people don't know that part. So there are FFA classes at those schools. A lot of schools have green teams and after-school clubs and scout clubs, but the high school students do a lot of stewardship work in these school forests. So a lot of trail building and maintenance and building. And I'm not sure if I answered the question. Sometimes we do share. Project Learning Tree has a green careers curriculum guide for high school teachers to help direct students that way. That is super helpful. And I don't know, that's high school for me. Yeah.
That's great. That's really helpful. I know we're like almost kind of running out of time. So if folks have questions, if you all don't, Sue or Laura, mind dropping your email information in the chat so folks can capture that. We also will follow up with any questions that have been asked and not answered live. And we thank you so much for spending some time with us today. And I hope you learned a lot. And we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.